In the dimly lit corridors of the Galactic Council chambers, whispers swirled like a restless storm. The air was thick with an undercurrent of unease, a collective discomfort that had settled over the assembly for weeks. At the center of this unrest stood Princess Leora, heir to the throne of the Verani Empire, a once mighty civilization now teetering on the edge of collapse. Her presence commanded attention not because of her regal bearing or the shimmering silver circlet atop her head, but because of what she represented, a symbol of both tragedy and hope. Leora's body bore the scars of a violent past, the aftermath of an interstellar conflict that had shattered her homeworld and left her permanently disabled. Her left leg, encased in a sleek biomechanical brace, moved with deliberate precision, each step a testament to the resilience of her spirit. Her right arm, though functional, carried faint traces of burn marks from the attack that had claimed so much. Yet it wasn't just her physical condition that set her apart, it was the way she carried herself, with quiet dignity despite the weight of her circumstances. The galaxy knew her name, but few dared to speak it aloud without a trace of pity or disdain. To many, she was a relic of a bygone era, a princess whose kingdom no longer held sway over the stars. Her people whispered behind closed doors about how their once proud empire had fallen into disarray, its resources depleted, its alliances crumbling. And yet, here she stood, unbroken, unwilling to surrender to despair. Leora's eyes, a piercing shade of violet unique to her species, burned with a fire that refused to be extinguished. She was a paradox, fragile yet unyielding, wounded yet defiant. But the universe is cruel in its indifference, and even royalty cannot escape the judgment of those who seek power or advantage. Suitors came and went, their intentions transparent as thin glass. Some sought to exploit her title for political gain. Others approached her out of obligation, their faces masks of thinly veiled disgust when they realized the extent of her injuries. Each rejection stung, though she wore them like armor, layer upon layer until she could barely feel the blows anymore. Still, there were moments when the loneliness crept in, uninvited and insidious, gnawing at the edges of her resolve. Her family, too, bore the burden of shame. Once revered as leaders among the stars, they now faced ridicule from neighboring systems. Their daughter, their crown jewel, was seen as damaged goods, unworthy of alliance. It was a bitter pill to swallow, one that turned their pride into desperation. They arranged meetings, brokered deals, and pleaded with distant rulers to consider her hand in marriage. But every attempt ended in failure, leaving Leora more isolated than before. And so, the rumors spread. "No one wants her," they said. "She's too broken, too weak." These words echoed through the halls of power, seeping into the ears of those who feigned sympathy while secretly rejoicing at her misfortune. Even her closest advisors began to doubt whether she could ever restore her people's glory. The very thought of uniting with such a princess seemed unthinkable to most, a gamble too risky to take. Yet amidst the scorn and rejection, Leora found solace in small victories. She dedicated herself to rebuilding her planet, working tirelessly alongside engineers and scientists to revive its fractured infrastructure. She visited orphanages, spoke to survivors of the war, and listened to their stories with unwavering compassion. Though her body may have been scarred, her heart remained whole, capable of love and empathy in ways that astonished even her harshest critics. Still, the question lingered in the minds of all who crossed her path. Who would dare to stand beside her? Who could see beyond her injuries and recognize the strength within? As days turned into months, the answer remained elusive, buried beneath layers of prejudice and fear. But somewhere, far beyond the reaches of the Verani Empire, fate was quietly weaving its threads, preparing to bring two lives together in ways neither could have imagined. Corporal Ethan Caldwell never expected his life to intersect with royalty. A soldier of Earth's United Defense Force, he had spent years navigating the treacherous landscapes of war-torn planets, his existence defined by duty and survival. Raised in the shadow of humanity's rapid expansion across the stars, Ethan grew up hearing tales of alien civilizations both wondrous and fearsome. Yet nothing in his upbringing prepared him for the moment he first laid eyes on Princess Leora during a diplomatic mission to the Verani capital. It was supposed to be a routine assignment, escort a delegation of human diplomats to the annual Galactic Concord Summit. Ethan's role was simple: ensure the safety of his charges while maintaining a low profile. He had seen countless dignitaries over the years, each more polished and poised than the last. But none of them prepared him for the sight of Leora entering the Grand Hall. Her presence commanded silence, not through authority but through sheer magnetism. She moved with grace despite the mechanical hum of her leg brace, her violet eyes scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and guardedness. Ethan couldn't look away. There was something profoundly human about her vulnerability, something that resonated deep within him. Perhaps it was the way she carried herself, not with arrogance, but with quiet determination, or perhaps it was the subtle tremor in her voice as she addressed the crowd. Whatever it was, it struck a chord. For the first time in his career, Ethan felt an urge to step forward, to bridge the gap between himself and someone entirely out of reach. Their paths crossed again later that evening, during a private reception hosted by the Verani royal family. Ethan found himself lingering near the refreshment table, nursing a glass of synth wine while observing the mingling guests. That's when he noticed her standing alone near a panoramic window, gazing out at the swirling nebula beyond. Summoning courage he didn't know he possessed, he approached her. "Princess," he began hesitantly, bowing slightly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Leora turned, surprise flickering across her face before softening into a smile. "Not at all, Corporal Caldwell. Please, join me." Their conversation started cautiously, touching on topics safe and neutral, the summit proceedings, the beauty of the nebula outside, but soon delved deeper. Ethan spoke of his childhood on Earth, of growing up in a world where humanity constantly strived to prove itself among older, more advanced species. Leora shared stories of her own struggles, of rebuilding her shattered homeland and facing the skepticism of others. They discovered common ground in their shared experiences of adversity, finding comfort in the realization that they weren't so different after all. As the night wore on, Ethan found himself drawn to her resilience, her ability to find light even in the darkest corners of her life. He admired the way she spoke, not with bitterness or resentment, but with hope and conviction. In turn, Leora saw something in Ethan that few others did, a man unburdened by the prejudices of his peers, someone who looked at her not as a symbol of weakness but as a person worthy of respect. By the end of the evening, Ethan knew he couldn't leave without expressing what had been building inside him throughout their conversation. Standing before her, he hesitated only briefly before speaking. "Your Highness." "Leora," he corrected himself, meeting her gaze steadily. "I don't know if this is appropriate, given our positions, but I wanted to say, you inspire me. More than anyone I've ever met." Leora blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his words. "Thank you, Ethan," she replied softly. "That means more than you know." Their connection continued to grow in the weeks that followed, facilitated by chance encounters and stolen moments during subsequent missions. Ethan became a frequent visitor to the Verani embassy, always finding excuses to accompany delegations or assist with security details. Leora, for her part, welcomed his company, cherishing the rare opportunity to speak freely with someone who treated her as an equal rather than a spectacle. Word of their budding relationship eventually reached the ears of the galactic elite, sparking outrage and disbelief. How could a mere human soldier presume to court a princess? The scandal rippled through diplomatic circles, drawing sharp criticism from those who viewed Ethan's actions as presumptuous and disrespectful. Even members of Leora's own court voiced their disapproval, warning her of the potential consequences should she continue down this path. "You're risking everything," one advisor cautioned her during a tense meeting. "This infatuation will tarnish your reputation further. You must sever ties with him immediately." Leora listened silently, her expression unreadable. When the advisor finished, she rose from her seat and addressed the room with a calm authority that silenced all dissent. "I understand your concerns," she said evenly. "But I will not abandon someone who sees me for who I truly am. If that makes me unfit to rule, then so be it." Ethan faced similar backlash from his superiors, who questioned his loyalty and professionalism. Accusations flew thick and fast. He was labeled reckless, irresponsible, even traitorous. Some suggested he was using Leora to advance his own status, while others accused him of undermining Earth's standing in the galaxy. Despite the mounting pressure, Ethan refused to back down. "I didn't choose this," he told his commanding officer during a heated confrontation. "But I won't walk away either. Not from her." The scandal reached new heights when images of Ethan and Leora together surfaced in the media, fueling public discourse across multiple systems. Protesters gathered outside embassies, chanting slogans that ranged from supportive to vitriolic. Social feeds buzzed with debates about interspecies relationships, class divides, and the future of diplomacy. Amidst the chaos, Ethan and Leora clung to each other, their bond strengthened by the adversity they faced. For Ethan, the challenges only solidified his resolve. Every insult hurled his way, every accusation leveled against him, served as a reminder of why he cared for Leora so deeply. She wasn't just a princess, she was a fighter, a survivor, someone who refused to let others define her worth. And for Leora, Ethan represented something she had long thought impossible: unconditional acceptance. Together, they defied convention, forging a connection that transcended titles, borders, and expectations. Yet even as their love flourished, shadows loomed on the horizon. Powerful factions within the galactic community began plotting to separate them, fearing the implications of their union. Diplomatic tensions escalated, threatening to unravel fragile alliances. Meanwhile, whispers of rebellion stirred among extremist groups, eager to exploit the controversy for their own gain. Ethan and Leora found themselves at the center of a storm unlike any they had faced before, a storm that threatened to tear them apart unless they could find a way to weather it together. The weight of their forbidden love pressed heavily on both Ethan and Leora, testing the limits of their endurance. As the galactic community fractured further, the couple navigated a labyrinth of political machinations, societal pressures, and personal doubts. Each day brought new challenges, each challenge chipping away at their resolve. Yet amidst the turmoil, they discovered unexpected allies in the most unlikely places. Among these allies was Captain Miriam Solis, a seasoned officer in United Defense Force and one of Ethan's former mentors. Initially skeptical of his relationship with Leora, Captain Solis had watched the scandal unfold with growing concern. However, after witnessing Ethan's steadfast commitment and hearing first-hand accounts of Leora's resilience, her perspective shifted. One evening, under the guise of a routine debriefing, she approached Ethan with a proposition. "Ethan," she began, her tone measured yet urgent, "I've been monitoring the situation closely. You're aware of the risks, but I believe your union with Princess Leora could serve a greater purpose. If handled correctly, it might pave the way for stronger interspecies alliances." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. "How do you propose we proceed, Captain?" Solis leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We need to present your relationship not as a scandal, but as a beacon of unity. I can rally support within the military ranks and use my influence to sway key figures in Earth's government. But we'll need Leora's cooperation, and her trust." With cautious optimism, Ethan relayed the plan to Leora. To his relief, she embraced the idea, recognizing the potential to transform their personal struggle into a catalyst for change. Together, they devised a strategy to leverage their bond as a symbol of hope and collaboration, countering the divisive rhetoric that sought to drive them apart. Meanwhile, on the Verani front, an unexpected advocate emerged in the form of Ambassador Kael Voran, a respected elder statesman known for his diplomatic acumen. Having observed Leora's tireless efforts to rebuild her people's shattered world, Voran saw in her a leader capable of transcending tradition. He approached her privately, offering his counsel and resources. "Your Highness," Voran began, his voice imbued with gravitas, "the galaxy fears what it does not understand. Your union with Corporal Caldwell challenges entrenched beliefs, but it also offers an opportunity to redefine them. Allow me to facilitate discussions with moderate factions willing to embrace progress." Grateful for his support, Leora accepted Voran's assistance, knowing that navigating the complex web of galactic politics required wisdom beyond her years. With his guidance, she initiated discreet dialogues with influential leaders, emphasizing the mutual benefits of fostering understanding between their peoples. Despite these promising developments, opposition remained fierce. Extremist groups seized upon the controversy, inciting violence and spreading propaganda designed to destabilize the fragile peace. Protests erupted across multiple planets, some peaceful, others descending into chaos. Ethan and Leora found themselves thrust into the spotlight, their every move scrutinized and dissected by a polarized populace. During one particularly harrowing incident, a rally organized by pro-unity activists was ambushed by radicals intent on silencing dissent. Ethan, stationed nearby as part of a security detail, acted swiftly to protect the attendees, including Leora. The ensuing clash left several injured, casting a pall over their efforts. Yet even in the aftermath, Ethan's bravery earned him newfound respect among those who had previously condemned him. Back on Earth, public opinion began to shift as stories of Ethan and Leora's courage circulated. Journalists, inspired by their unwavering commitment, published articles highlighting the positive impact of their relationship. Ordinary citizens, moved by their plight, organized grassroots campaigns advocating for tolerance and acceptance. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. However, the road ahead remained fraught with peril. Power-hungry politicians exploited the discord to advance their agendas, while covert operations aimed at sabotaging Ethan and Leora's plans intensified. Betrayals lurked around every corner, forcing them to tread carefully lest they inadvertently trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Through it all, Ethan and Leora clung to each other, drawing strength from their shared vision of a united galaxy. They understood that their journey was far from over, that the battle for acceptance would require sacrifices neither could fully anticipate. Yet they faced each obstacle with renewed determination, buoyed by the knowledge that they were not alone. Captain Solis and Ambassador Vorin worked tirelessly behind the scenes, coordinating efforts to build a coalition of supporters spanning various species and systems. They orchestrated secret summits, brokered tentative agreements, and laid the groundwork for a historic accord, one that would acknowledge the legitimacy of Ethan and Leora's union and set a precedent for future interspecies partnerships. As preparations for this pivotal moment gained momentum, Ethan and Leora prepared themselves for the ultimate test. They knew that the outcome would shape not only their destinies but also the fate of countless others who dared to dream of a better tomorrow. With hearts intertwined and spirits unyielding, they stood ready to confront whatever lay ahead, united in purpose and fortified by love. In the heart of the Verani capital, beneath the watchful gaze of ancient constellations, Ethan and Leora stood side by side, their hands clasped tightly together. Around them, the grand hall buzzed with anticipation, filled to capacity with dignitaries, diplomats, and representatives from across the galaxy. This was the culmination of months of relentless effort, a moment that would either cement their legacy or shatter their dreams. As they exchanged vows in a ceremony blending Earth's traditions with Verani customs, the air crackled with tension and hope. Ethan wore his formal military attire, adorned with medals earned through years of service. Beside him, Leora radiated elegance in a flowing gown that shimmered like starlight, its design incorporating elements of both her heritage and Ethan's culture. The symbolism was not lost on those in attendance. This union represented more than two individuals. It embodied the possibility of harmony between worlds long divided. Yet, even as they pledged their love, shadows lingered at the edges of the celebration. Whispers of dissent echoed through the crowd, muttered under breaths too low to disrupt the solemnity of the occasion. Some attendees wore expressions of thinly veiled disdain, their presence mandated by protocol rather than conviction. Others sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, refusing to acknowledge the significance of what transpired before them. Outside the palace walls, protests raged. Crowds surged through the streets, some chanting slogans of support, others hurling insults and threats. Security forces struggled to maintain order, their ranks stretched thin as clashes erupted sporadically. News drones hovered overhead, capturing footage that would soon flood media channels, amplifying the discord reverberating through the galaxy. Within the hall, Captain Solis and Ambassador Vorin exchanged uneasy glances. Both had poured their energies into ensuring this day would come to pass, yet neither could shake the feeling that unseen forces conspired against them. Intelligence reports hinted at covert operations targeting key figures involved in the coalition, including themselves. The stakes were higher than ever, and failure loomed ominously on the horizon. As the ceremony concluded, Ethan and Leora stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city, greeted by a cacophony of cheers and jeers. Below, the divided masses mirrored the fractured state of the galaxy itself. Ethan tightened his grip on Leora's hand, drawing strength from her unwavering resolve. Together, they faced the tumultuous sea of emotions, their silhouettes framed by the glow of distant stars. "We've come this far," Ethan murmured, his voice steady despite the turmoil. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together." Leora nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the same determination that had carried her through countless trials. "Together," she echoed, her voice carrying a note of defiance that resonated deep within the hearts of those who believed in their cause. Behind closed doors, urgent meetings unfolded. Captain Solis convened with trusted allies, strategizing responses to emerging threats. Reports indicated that extremist cells planned coordinated attacks aimed at destabilizing the newly formed coalition. Time was running out, and every decision weighed heavily on the fate of their fragile alliance. Ambassador Vorin, meanwhile, engaged in clandestine negotiations with moderate factions hesitant to commit fully to the cause. He appealed to their sense of justice, reminding them of the broader implications should Ethan and Leora's union fail. His arguments struck chords with some, swaying opinions ever so slightly toward acceptance. Yet skepticism persisted, fueled by fear of the unknown. Back in the public eye, Ethan and Leora embarked on a whirlwind tour of key systems, addressing crowds and participating in forums designed to foster dialogue. Their message remained consistent. Unity was not merely desirable but necessary for survival. Through shared pain and triumph, they painted a picture of a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. But resistance proved formidable. Radical leaders capitalized on existing prejudices, twisting narratives to portray Ethan and Leora as symbols of decay rather than progress. Violence flared anew, threatening to engulf entire regions in chaos. The couple found themselves navigating minefields of hostility, their every step scrutinized by enemies eager to exploit any misstep. Amidst the chaos, personal sacrifices mounted. Ethan received word that his younger sister, serving in a distant quadrant, had fallen victim to an ambush linked to anti-coalition extremists. Grief-stricken, he wrestled with guilt and anger, questioning whether his pursuit of love had endangered those he held dear. Leora, sensing his turmoil, offered solace, reminding him that their struggle extended beyond individual losses. It encompassed the hopes of countless others yearning for peace. Their resolve hardened, forged in the crucible of adversity. With each challenge overcome, their bond deepened, becoming an unbreakable tether anchoring them against the storm. Allies rallied around them, inspired by their perseverance. New voices joined the chorus calling for change, swelling the ranks of supporters determined to see their vision realized. Yet uncertainty loomed large. Rumors of a massive offensive planned by extremist groups circulated, prompting emergency sessions among coalition leaders. Strategies were devised, contingencies mapped out, but the specter of impending conflict cast a pall over their efforts. Ethan and Leora knew that the coming days would determine not only their fate but the destiny of the galaxy itself. Standing together once more, they gazed out at the vast expanse of stars stretching endlessly before them. Each twinkle held the promise of untold stories, of lives interconnected across unimaginable distances. In that moment, they understood that their journey was far from over, that the true test of their love lay not in declarations made under ceremonial arches but in the battles yet to be fought. Hand in hand, they prepared to face whatever the universe threw their way, fortified by the knowledge that they were not alone. Around them, a network of supporters stood ready to fight alongside them, bound by a shared dream of unity. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with peril and promise alike. But as long as they stood together, nothing, not prejudice, not violence, not fear, could extinguish the flame of hope burning brightly within them. The final confrontation came sooner than anyone anticipated. Intelligence reports confirmed that a coalition of extremist factions had united under a single banner, intent on dismantling the fragile peace Ethan and Leora had worked so tirelessly to build. Their plan was audacious, a coordinated assault on key diplomatic hubs across multiple systems, timed to coincide with the signing of the historic Intergalactic Accord, a document symbolizing unity and mutual cooperation between Earth and the Vayrani Empire. Ethan and Leora found themselves at the epicenter of this storm once again. The Accord ceremony was scheduled to take place aboard the Celestial Nexus, a massive orbital station serving as neutral ground for negotiations. Security measures were unprecedented, with forces from both human and Vayrani fleets converging to protect the event. Yet even with such precautions, the threat loomed large, casting a shadow over what should have been a moment of triumph. As they prepared to board the shuttle that would carry them to the Nexus, Ethan turned to Leora, his expression grave but resolute. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly, his voice barely audible over the hum of engines and distant chatter. Leora met his gaze, her violet eyes unwavering. "I've spent my entire life fighting for something worth believing in," she replied. "If we falter now, everything we've built will crumble. We can't let that happen." Their words carried the weight of shared sacrifice, a testament to the countless battles, both personal and political, they'd endured to reach this point. Hand in hand, they stepped onto the shuttle, their presence radiating quiet strength despite the turmoil brewing around them. Upon arriving at the Nexus, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation and unease. Delegates from dozens of species mingled in the grand atrium, exchanging cautious pleasantries while covertly scanning for signs of danger. Captain Solis and Ambassador Voran flanked Ethan and Leora, their expressions taut with vigilance. Every corridor was lined with armed guards, every entrance fortified against potential breaches. Inside the chamber where the accord would be signed, the tension was palpable. As representatives took their seats, Ethan and Leora stood at the forefront, embodying the spirit of collaboration the document represented. The room fell silent as the ceremony began, the air thick with hope and dread. It happened during the penultimate speech, delivered by a venerable elder from a neighboring system. A sudden explosion rocked the station, sending shockwaves through the chamber. Alarms blared, and chaos erupted as delegates scrambled for safety. Through the haze of smoke and debris, armed insurgents stormed the room, their weapons trained on the gathered leaders. Ethan reacted instinctively, pulling Leora behind a reinforced podium as blasts ricocheted off the walls. Around them, security forces engaged the attackers in a desperate bid to contain the situation. Amidst the pandemonium, Ethan locked eyes with Captain Solis, who gave him a sharp nod before leading a counterattack. "Stay close," Ethan urged Leora, his voice firm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. She nodded, gripping his hand tightly as they moved cautiously toward an emergency exit. But escape wasn't their only option. Deep down, Ethan knew that fleeing would undermine everything they stood for. If they abandoned the accord now, it would signal defeat. Not just for them, but for the ideals of unity and acceptance they had championed. Turning to Leora, he saw the same resolve reflected in her eyes. "We need to finish this," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "No matter what happens, we see it through." Together, they made their way back into the heart of the chaos, navigating narrow corridors filled with the sounds of combat. Alongside them, Captain Solis and Ambassador Voran rallied remaining defenders, forming a protective perimeter around the accord documents. Each step forward felt like stepping into the unknown, yet they pressed on, driven by a shared purpose greater than fear. When they reached the central chamber, the scene was one of devastation. Bodies lay scattered, some injured, others unconscious. The insurgents had regrouped, their leader, a charismatic extremist named Kale Draven, standing atop the dais, holding the accord aloft like a trophy about to be destroyed. "You think your love changes anything?" Draven sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "This abomination is nothing but a mockery of tradition. It weakens us all." His words ignited fury within Ethan, but it was Leora who stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're wrong," she declared, her tone steady and commanding. "Our love isn't weakness, it's strength. It proves that even in the face of hatred and division, there's always hope. And no amount of violence will ever change that." Her words resonated deeply, silencing the room for a brief but profound moment. Even some of the insurgents hesitated, doubt flickering across their faces. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan lunged forward, tackling Draven to the ground. A fierce struggle ensued, ending only when Captain Solis intervened, disarming the extremist leader. With Draven subdued, order slowly began to restore itself. Medical teams rushed in to tend to the wounded, while reinforcements secured the station. In the aftermath, Ethan and Leora returned to the dais, battered but unbroken. Together, they retrieved the accord, its pages singed but intact. Under the watchful eyes of survivors and witnesses alike, they completed the ceremony, signing the document amidst tears and applause. It was a moment of defiance, a declaration that love and unity could prevail even in the darkest of times. In the days that followed, the galaxy grappled with the aftermath of the attack. While pockets of resistance remained, the tide had shifted irreversibly. Ethan and Leora's courage inspired millions, sparking movements for peace and understanding across star systems. Their story became legend, a reminder that even the most unlikely bonds could reshape the course of history. As they stood together on the observation deck of the repaired Nexus, gazing out at the vast expanse of stars, Ethan wrapped an arm around Leora's shoulders. "We did it," he murmured, his voice tinged with awe. Leora leaned into him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Not just us," she corrected gently. Everyone who believed in us. Everyone who refused to give up. And as they looked out at the cosmos, they knew their journey was far from over. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace, knowing they had planted the seeds of a brighter future, a future where love transcended boundaries, and hope conquered despair.